stick with you, Beeps, here. You've got the highest ADP to avoid.
Yeah, while I'm cooking, I might as well just keep on grilling. And I'm going to grill Ilya Sorokin on this one. He is my ADP to avoid. This one was a little too obvious for me, fellas. Probably my most passionate ADP to avoid across my whole, across all the episodes here. At 59.8 ADP, I'm completely out on Ilya Sorokin. He's currently the 7th goalie going off the board, despite failing to finish in the top 10 in any of the 3 major statistical categories for goalies. He's 30 years old, going on 31. And he finished out a disappointing year last year by finishing 10th in wins, 20th in save percentage, and 25th in goals against average, while also appearing in the 4th amount of games. So that just shows how many games he actually would have anchored, or not anchored, would have just hurt your lineup by having him in there. It's tempting to, put that starting goalie in there, but when he's doing what Sorokin's doing on just a terrible team, it's a scary situation. Going as the first goalie off the board on many teams, the Islanders offense really made no improvements in the offseason, which just goes to show that they might be going for another lottery pick next season, and that does not bode well for Sorokin at all. They finished 28th in the NHL in goals for last year, which is brutal, and as I mentioned, they're not looking much better up front. You add in the loss of top defenseman Noah Dobson and his 23 minutes a night. Regardless of if he was not the greatest defensively, he still is much better than what they will be putting out there. We saw Tony DeAngelo eating 23-21 last year on average. And if you're willing to trust a goalie that has Tony DeAngelo in front of him for 23-21 a night, I think you're crazy. So as the 7th one off the board, I don't even know if he should be the 17th off the board. We've mentioned it. Goaltenders are a product of their environment, and the environment on Long Island is absolutely brutal right now. It's not an environment you want to be in. As much as I talked about Vejmelka having a team behind him that could score goals, that could be better defensively, Sorokin might have a team that could score less goals and could be worse defensively, and there really isn't much room to get worse there. So at 60 ADP, there are stars being taken off the board around him. So if someone takes him at that point in your draft, just laugh, because they clearly do not listen to our podcast or read our articles.
Yeah, as you mentioned,
so easy.
10th goalie ADP off the board right now. We've got him consensus as our number 16 goalie, so not great.
Sorry, when I wrote that, he was 7th. So
still though.
Adjustment, still terrible, still not worth it.
We're 6 spots lower in ADP. The Islanders, according to the sportsbook, 22nd best team in the league, 85 points, well out of the playoff picture. As you mentioned, not a team that scores a lot of goals, and also last year they were 23rd in shot suppression, 21st in scoring chances against per 60 at 5v5. So not a great defensive team, even though people think they are still. Then losing Noah Dobson certainly not going to help. I think this is a nice segue into my ADP to avoid. Do you mean you have a similar thing going on here, where our breakouts last year broke out so hard that they became our ADPs to avoid this year because they've just climbed up the draft boards a little too high for our liking? My ADP to avoid, unfortunately, as much as I loved him last year and everything he did for me, is Dustin Wolf. The ADP is quite high, unfortunately, given how good he was last year, 61.1, which is the 11th goalie off the board. And I've got him ranked as my 10th goalie overall. So I still like Dustin Wolf. I think it's a little rich. I think just who kind of exactly what Beebs just said, who you're kind of giving up on in that spot is not great. Plus, the goalies going just above him are Kemper, Aiden Hill, Philip Gustafsson, guys that I think I feel a lot better about, much better teams. When you take a look at the sportsbook odds, similar to the Islanders, they have 85 points. They're expected to be tied for 22nd this year, well out of the playoff picture. I just don't know if there's going to be enough wins there for Dustin Wolf to easily be a top, number 1 fantasy netminder this year. So as good as he was last year, I just don't know if he's going to get there this year with that ADP. So unfortunately, as good or as much Dustin Wolf as I had last year, I probably will not be there this year. Just to give you an idea too, they were good last year, right? They're pretty solid, middle of the pack defensively. The offense was okay. He was 9th in save percentage, but he was 21st in goals saved above expected. So, kind of a middling goalie overall that put together a pretty strong season overall. But I just don't know if he gets there with how poor I expect the Flames to be this season. So the ADP, like Sorokin, just quite rich and a little bit too rich for my liking. But
you also have to worry about Rasmus Andersson right now. He's in the last year of his contract year. Brock's talked about him in previous seasons of how good he is defensively, and he could be out of town before the trade deadline. So
Yeah, there's, I just think that's a team
nice.
that's expected to take a step back this year too, right? They were a bit surprising last year, and maybe they gritted again this year. But D, your breakout last year has now turned into an ADP to avoid as well.
Yeah, Logan Thompson, and again, it's ADP to avoid. It's not bust, right? I mean, I'm in a keeper league where it's pick cost for keeper. I'm keeping both of these guys. I have Wolf as an 11th and Thompson as a 10th, I think. But just where they're going on the draft board, it just doesn't make any sense when you look at not just the names of other positions that you're passing up, but just the other goaltenders that are going either around them or a few rounds later that I think are in much safer spots. Again, I had Thompson as a breakout pick last year, like Brock said, ended up being one of the unsung heroes in fantasy, right? And that was, a big part of why I liked him is because I thought he would separate himself from Charlie Lindgren. That didn't happen. Even though the splits were marginally better, they still stayed locked into a tandem. And of course, Thompson was able to overcome that by winning an absurd total of 31 games in just 42 starts. The problem is now that he's going about 100 picks earlier than he did last year, and the sports books across the board are expecting the Capitals to take a step back this year, entering the season with a projected points total of 95.5. That's a 15.5 point drop from where they finished last year. A big part of that is the expected regression to their shooting percentage. They led the league at 12.61%. It's going to be a mark that's going to be difficult to replicate this year, meaning we're likely to see a drop in goal support for Thompson. And of course, like I said, there's the fact the Capitals were married to their goalie rotation last season, a trend that's likely to continue this year. They extended Charlie Lindgren to a 3-year, $9 million contract extension last March, not insignificant. So, it's difficult to just throw out what Thompson brought to fantasy teams last year. And like I said, I'm not doing that entirely. You just need to be realistic on what to expect from him, which I think is slightly above average splits while being locked into a timeshare on what projects to be a borderline top 15 team in the league. So simply, to me, doesn't make sense to spend a late 6th round pick on him when you can get guys who are set to take on much larger workloads on teams with similar projections 2 to 3 rounds later. Jordan Binnington, Linus Ullmark, Sam Montembeault all fall into that category for me. Even Jakob Markstrom, who's going about 5 picks behind him, I think makes a lot more sense. I think Thompson will be lucky to get anywhere close to the 31 wins he tallied a season ago, and I just don't expect to be drafting him in any of my redraft leagues this season.
Yeah, just to give you an idea for Dustin Wolf and Logan Thompson. So if you take Dustin Wolf, obviously we talked about the goalies is kind of going around him, but then also the players you're passing up on: Brandon Hagel right after him, Wyatt Johnson, Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Elias Pettersson, Alex DeBrincat, Thomas Harley, all guys that we really like. Then similarly for Logan Thompson, right? You're passing up on Matvei Mishkov, Dylan Larkin, Matthew Nyes, Lucas Raymond, Nikolai Ehlers. So you can wait a couple rounds to get similar goalie profiles and load up on much better skaters. So those ADPs certainly make me nervous. Thanks for watching this video. If you want more great fantasy hockey and betting content from myself, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, and the rest of the DFO analysts, make sure you subscribe to the DFO Fantasy and Betting YouTube channel today and never miss a minute.